The torches flickered against the cold stone walls of the Templar commandery at La Rochelle, casting long shadows across the vaulted ceiling. Brother Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar, moved with purpose through the narrow corridor. Behind him, 4 trusted knights carried an ornate wooden chest bound with iron. The year was 1307, and whispers had reached them that King Philip IV of France was preparing to move against their order. "Seal the lower chamber," de Molay commanded, his voice barely above a whisper. "These texts must never fall into the hands of those who would misuse them." As the knights descended into the hidden vault beneath the chapel floor, they carried with them what some would later claim to be the most dangerous collection of writings Christendom had ever known. Scriptures and scrolls that told a different story of Christ, of creation, and of man's relationship with the divine. Texts that, if revealed, could topple the very foundations of the medieval church. Did the Knights Templar, those warrior monks who rose from humble beginnings to become the medieval world's most powerful military religious order, truly possess sacred writings that could upend the accepted biblical canon? This question has haunted historians, theologians, and mystery seekers for centuries. The Knights Templar emerged in the aftermath of the First Crusade, founded around 1119 by Hugh de Payens and 8 other French knights. Their stated mission was noble and straightforward: to protect Christian pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land. Yet within decades, they had transformed into something far more complex. Bankers to kings, owners of vast estates across Europe and the Levant, and perhaps, as some theories suggest, guardians of secrets that the Church desperately wanted buried. The poor fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon, as they first called themselves, established their headquarters on Jerusalem's Temple Mount, a location that would prove pivotal to the mysteries that would later surround them. Their initial quarters stood upon the ruins of what many believed to be King Solomon's Temple, a site already steeped in esoteric lore and rumored to contain hidden chambers and forgotten knowledge. For nearly 2 centuries, the Templars enjoyed unprecedented privilege and power. Pope Innocent II's papal bull of 1139, Omni Datum Optimum, granted them independence from local ecclesiastical authority, answerable only to the Pope himself. They developed Europe's first banking system, financed wars and kingdoms, and built a network of commanderies and fortresses that stretched from England to the Holy Land. But it was their time in Jerusalem, Acre, and other Levantine strongholds that provides the first clues to their potential discovery of alternative scriptures. The Near East of the 12th and 13th centuries was a crossroads of religious knowledge. While the official church in Rome had solidified its biblical canon centuries earlier at councils like Nicaea and Carthage, the lands of Syria, Egypt, and Judea remained repositories of texts that had been excluded. Gnostic Gospels, Jewish apocalyptic literature, and early Christian writings deemed heretical. The Templars were uniquely positioned, explains Dr. Helen Nicholson, professor of medieval history at Cardiff University. They had the military might to access sites long closed to Western Christians, the scholarly connections to recognize valuable texts, and most importantly, the independent authority to keep such discoveries private. Excavations beneath the Temple Mount, long rumored but never definitively proven, may have yielded scrolls hidden since the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 CE. Other theories suggest Templar contacts with Eastern Christian communities, Sufi mystics, or Jewish scholars provided access to alternative religious texts kept alive in these traditions, but suppressed in Western Europe. As their power grew, so too did suspicion. By the late 13th century, the Templars faced a changing political landscape. The Holy Land had been lost to Muslim forces. European monarchs, particularly Philip IV of France, deeply indebted to the order, looked upon their wealth with envious eyes. And within the church, whispers began that these warrior monks had been corrupted by Eastern ideas, that they had brought back to Europe not just spices and silks, but dangerous theological concepts. What exactly might these banned scriptures have contained? Historical records, fragmentary evidence, and persistent legends point to several possibilities. The so-called Gospel of the Templars features prominently in many accounts. Unlike the canonical Gospels, this text supposedly portrayed Jesus not as divine, but as a human prophet in a royal bloodline, a direct descendant of King David, whose mission was political as well as spiritual. Some versions of this theory suggest this gospel explicitly documented Jesus' marriage to Mary Magdalene and their descendants, establishing a sacred bloodline that the Templars were sworn to protect. The idea that the Templars possessed a complete alternative gospel is difficult to substantiate, notes Dr. Barbara Frallo, a historian at the Vatican's secret archives. However, we know that numerous non-canonical gospels existed, and some fragments discovered in the modern era, like the Gospel of Philip, do hint at a close relationship between Jesus and Mary Magdalene. Another text frequently associated with the Templars is the Book of the Temple, purportedly containing secret knowledge passed down from Solomon himself. This manuscript allegedly detailed esoteric architectural principles, alchemical formulas, and mystical practices that Solomon's temple architects had encoded into the original structure. The Templars, excavating beneath their headquarters, might have discovered this text along with certain temple treasures. More controversial are the Scrolls of the Resurrection, which some theories claim offered a radically different account of the central miracle of Christianity. Rather than a physical resurrection, these writings supposedly describe techniques of spiritual enlightenment that Jesus taught to an inner circle of disciples, techniques for achieving a metaphorical resurrection through mystical practice rather than divine intervention. The Codex Templi, another rumored text, allegedly contained prophetic writings that foretold corruption within the church and predicted its eventual fall unless it returned to the pure teachings of Christ. Such prophecies would have been particularly threatening to the 14th century papacy, which was engaged in power struggles with European monarchs and facing internal criticisms of wealth and corruption. The possible origins of these texts span the religious landscape of the ancient Near East. The Dead Sea Scrolls, discovered in modern times but potentially known to the Templars, revealed the diverse theological environment of first-century Judaism and early Christianity. Essene writings, with their emphasis on purity and apocalyptic expectations, could have informed Templar spirituality. Coptic manuscripts from Egypt, like those discovered at Nag Hammadi in 1945, contained Gnostic texts emphasizing personal knowledge, gnosis over ecclesiastical authority, a concept that would have undermined the Church's power structure. The Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary, and the Apocryphon of John all presented theological frameworks that diverged significantly from Orthodox Christianity. Perhaps most dangerous would have been texts that combined elements of these traditions with obscure Hebrew prophecies and mystical practices from the Kabbalah, creating a syncretic spiritual system that challenged the Church's monopoly on salvation. Dr. Malcolm Barber, a leading Templar historian, remains cautious. While the Templars certainly had opportunities to encounter alternative religious texts, the evidence that they systematically collected or were influenced by such writings remains circumstantial. Yet the persistence of these rumors speaks to something in the historical record. that remains unexplained. Why would possession of such texts pose a threat to the medieval church? The answer lies in understanding the nature of religious authority in medieval Europe. By the 13th century, the Catholic Church had established itself as the sole arbiter of Christian truth. The Pope, as Christ's representative on earth, claimed the exclusive right to interpret Scripture and doctrine. This monopoly on spiritual authority translated directly into political power. Kings ruled by divine right, but the Church claimed the authority to crown or depose them. Any texts challenging core Church doctrines threatened this carefully constructed system. Writings that humanized Jesus, questioned the virgin birth or physical resurrection, suggested secret teachings beyond those preserved by the Church, or established alternative lines of spiritual authority, would have been viewed not merely as theological curiosities, but as existential threats to the established order. The medieval Church didn't separate religious heresy from political sedition, explains Dr. Anne Brennan, historian of religious movements. To challenge doctrine was to challenge the very foundation of society. The suppression of alternative scriptures had precedent. The Albigensian Crusade, 1209 to 1229, had violently eradicated the Cathar movement in southern France, a group whose dualistic theology challenged church teachings and whose simplified religious practice threatened clerical authority. Many scholars have noted potential connections between surviving Cathar ideas and later Templar accusations. If the Templars indeed possessed forbidden texts, the process of suppression would have followed established patterns: papal investigations conducted in secret, confiscation of suspicious materials, and destruction of heretical writings. Yet the Templars' unique position, their wealth, military might, and papal protections, would have made direct action difficult without a pretext. Evidence suggests a gradual campaign against the order. Pope Clement V initiated inquiries as early as 1305, though whether motivated by genuine concerns about heresy or pressure from Philip IV remains debated. Documents from this period hint at dangerous writings and Eastern corruptions without specific details. The more intriguing question is whether these documents were destroyed, hidden, or smuggled away. Historical records confirm that in the months before the mass arrests, unusual Templar ship movements were observed departing from La Rochelle, a major Templar port. The cargo and destinations of these vessels remain unknown, feeding speculation that the order, forewarned of coming persecution, evacuated its most precious possessions, possibly including its library of forbidden texts. Dawn broke over France on Friday, October 13, 1307, a date that would become synonymous with misfortune. King Philip IV's sealed orders, dispatched weeks earlier to his seneschals throughout the kingdom, were opened simultaneously. The instructions were clear: arrest all Knights Templar, seize their properties, and confiscate their treasures and documents. The operation was executed with military precision. Thousands of Templars, from Grand Master Jacques de Molay to the humblest serving brothers, were taken into custody before they could organize resistance. The charges against them, read out in town squares across France, shocked the Christian world. Heresy, idolatry, homosexual practices, and denial of Christ. What followed was medieval Europe's most spectacular show trial. Under torture, the question extraordinary, applied with rack, strappado, and burning feet, many Templars confessed to a catalogue of ritual abominations. They admitted to spitting on the cross during initiation ceremonies, worshipping a mysterious head called Baphomet, and participating in obscene kissing rituals. Less publicized but more relevant to our investigation were confessions hinting at alternative religious teachings. Guillaume de Gisors, a Templar preceptor, allegedly confessed under torture that initiates were shown a great book of ancient writing and told that the true understanding of Christ's mission had been kept from the common people. Another Templar, Geoffrey de Charny, reportedly admitted that senior brothers were taught that Christ was but a man, not born of a virgin, and the resurrection was a deception created by the disciples. Bernard de Vado, whose testimony is preserved in the Vatican archives, claimed that during his initiation, he was shown writings from the East that spoke of Jesus as a prophet in the line of David, not as God incarnate. He further alleged that these texts prophesied the corruption of the Church of Rome and its eventual replacement by the true church preserved by the Knights. While these confessions must be viewed skeptically, extracted as they were through torture, the specific nature of the claims about alternative scriptures is striking. Rather than generic admissions of heresy, many described specific theological concepts found in Gnostic and Jewish Christian texts, only rediscovered centuries later. The trial records also reveal an obsession with finding Templar documents. Royal officers repeatedly demanded information about secret writings, the Great Book of the Temple, and scrolls from Jerusalem. Despite thorough searches of Templar preceptories across Europe, French and papal authorities reported disappointment at recovering primarily mundane administrative records and standard devotional texts. As Templar historian Sean Martin notes, the gap between what the interrogators clearly expected to find and what they actually discovered suggests either that incriminating texts had been removed before the arrests, or that the entire premise of secret Templar scriptures was fabricated to justify the suppression of the order. The mystery deepened when Pope Clement V issued the bull Vox in Excelso in 1312, officially dissolving the Templar order, not because their guilt had been proven beyond doubt, but for the good of the Church. This ambiguous justification has fueled centuries of speculation about what truths the Pope might have been trying to bury. The trail of the Templars' alleged forbidden scriptures grows cold after the order's dissolution, but the modern era has seen renewed interest and claimed discoveries that have reignited the mystery. The Vatican's secret archives, partially open to researchers in the 20th century, has yielded tantalizing but inconclusive evidence. In 1975, Dr. Barbara Frall discovered the Chinon parchment, a document showing that Pope Clement V had privately absolved the Templar leaders of heresy, contradicting the public narrative of their guilt. This finding raised questions about what other aspects of the official history might be inaccurate. The Chinon document proves the Vatican maintained one position publicly while acknowledging a different reality privately, notes Frall. This pattern of institutional secrecy makes it plausible that knowledge of recovered Templar texts might have been similarly suppressed. Other researchers point to Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland, built by William Sinclair in the 15th century, as a potential repository of Templar knowledge. The chapel's elaborate stone carvings include symbols associated with both Templar and Masonic traditions, and architectural elements that some interpret as coded references to suppressed scriptures. The plant carvings at Rosslyn include New World species like corn and aloe that shouldn't have been known in Scotland decades before Columbus, explains Robert Lomas, author of several books on Templar mysteries. This suggests the Sinclairs had access to knowledge from Templar navigational records that the official history claims didn't exist. In southern France, the enigmatic priest Béranger Saunière of Rennes-le-Château generated renewed interest in Templar secrets after his discovery of mysterious parchments in his church in 1891. Though the exact nature of his find remains disputed, Saunier's sudden, unexplained wealth and connections to esoteric societies fueled theories that he had located either Templar treasure or, more intriguingly, manuscripts preserved by their successors. Portugal, where many Templars were absorbed into the new Order of Christ after 1312, has yielded other clues. The Convent of Christ in Tomar, a former Templar stronghold, contains architectural anomalies, including a unique circular church, modeled after the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. In 2019, restoration work revealed previously unknown chambers beneath the nave, though their contents remain undisclosed pending archaeological investigation. Connections between the Templars and later secretive groups, particularly the Freemasons, suggest possible transmission of hidden knowledge. Masonic ritual contains elements that some scholars interpret as references to lost Templar teachings, including symbolic reenactments of the building of Solomon's Temple and references to hidden wisdom passed down through generations of initiates. The alleged connection to the Priory of Sion, popularized by books like Holy Blood, Holy Grail, and later the Da Vinci Code, remains more controversial. Though largely dismissed by academic historians after the exposure of forged documents, the core theory that a secret society preserved Templar knowledge about Jesus' bloodline continues to fascinate the public. Mainstream historians generally approach these claims with skepticism. The problem with Templar conspiracy theories is not that they're entirely implausible, explains Dr. Helen Nicholson. It's that they typically begin with a desired conclusion that the Templars possessed world-changing secrets, and work backward, interpreting ambiguous evidence to fit that narrative rather than following standard historical methodology. Others, like historian Michael Hogg, take a more nuanced view. While many Templar theories venture into pure speculation, we shouldn't dismiss the possibility that aspects of their spiritual practices and beliefs remain unknown to us. The historical record is fragmentary, and organizations facing extinction have strong incentives to conceal their most precious knowledge. As we reflect on the tantalizing fragments, disputed confessions, architectural enigmas, and persistent legends surrounding the Templars' forbidden scriptures, one question remains. Why does this particular historical mystery continue to capture our imagination 7 centuries after the Order's dissolution? Perhaps it speaks to a deep human desire to discover that there is more to our spiritual heritage than what mainstream institutions have preserved. That somewhere, hidden away in a forgotten vault or disguised in plain sight, lies a truth that would transform our understanding of faith, history, and our place in the cosmos. The idea of banned Templar scriptures challenges us to consider uncomfortable possibilities. What if the narrative of Christianity that shaped Western civilization for 2 millennia is incomplete or deliberately edited? What if alternative understandings of Jesus' life and teachings, suppressed as heretical, contain spiritual insights that could reconcile modern scientific worldviews with authentic religious experience? The Templar mystery endures because it occupies the tantalizing borderland between verifiable history and compelling speculation. Unlike pure fantasy, it is grounded in documented events: the Templars' presence in Jerusalem, their unprecedented rise and sudden fall, the acknowledged gaps in the historical record around their trial, and the undeniable suppression of alternative Christian texts throughout church history. If these writings were ever found, genuine, authenticated scriptures preserved by the Templar Order, how would they change Christianity and history? Would they reveal Jesus as a human teacher of wisdom rather than divine savior? Would they establish historical connections between Christian mysticism and other spiritual traditions? Would they vindicate Gnostic emphasis on direct spiritual knowledge over institutional authority? The answers remain locked away, perhaps in a hidden chamber beneath a medieval chapel, within an encrypted text whose key has been lost to time, or in the symbolism of traditions passed down through generations of initiates. Or perhaps the greatest secret of the Templars is that there was no secret, that the myth of forbidden knowledge has proven more powerful and enduring than any actual manuscript could be. As the medieval chronicler Walter Map wrote, "Some mysteries are not meant to be solved, but to be pondered across the centuries." The banned scriptures of the Knights Templar, whether historical reality or elaborate legend, continue to serve this purpose, reminding us that history's official narrative may never contain the whole truth, and that the quest for hidden knowledge is itself a form of spiritual pilgrimage. Somewhere, metaphorically or literally, an ancient scroll remains sealed, waiting for the right moment, or the right seeker, to reveal its contents to a world that may finally be ready to understand them.